never been ripped off. They have over there, it's very difficult to get an exporter's license. Only about 5% of all the factories have the ability to export. A lot of the other factories that make stuff broker it to factories who have an export license. So the guys that have an export license that can do export for you, they're probably not going to screw you. Because if they get a complaint or two, or somebody, and sometimes guess what happens when you get complaints in China? You just don't, you're not there anymore. You go away. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. Like, where are the generals at? I did a dinner one time. We used to have these generals that worked with this one factory we sold to. And every time we go over, there were 2 generals that would come to the dinner, and they were generals in the Chinese army. And they were evidently stockholders in the factory. And they would come to all the dinners, and we'd do entertainment and go out and party with them and all that. And I went over one time, and we're having a dinner, and the 2 generals aren't there. And I said, where are the 2 generals at? I said, oh, they're gone. And I said, where'd they go? Oh, they're gone. And I said, well, what are they doing now? And my guy's like, don't talk about that anymore. They're gone. Like Sopranos kind of gone. Yeah.
For example, like when we go over to China, can you actually put a purchase in or an offer in while you're there?
Yeah, you know what's changing, by the way? Yeah, it's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because the last 2 times I've been, it freaked me out a little bit. Something you're going to want with you is cash. Has anybody noticed that? Who goes to Canton lately? Who's been asked for cash on the floor? Have you been? It's weird. The last show I went to, they're wanting cash now. They're wanting a cash deposit, $500, $1,000, something when you place an order. And I think the reason why, I think so many people just going, oh yeah, I want this, and they'll order. They spend a lot of time with them, and then they're going to follow up when they get back, and they never do. So the factories now are wanting. I bought from one cat factory $96,000 worth of stuff, and she says, can you make a deposit? I'm like, and I'm thinking, shit, that's going to be like a lot. How much? And she says, maybe $500. And we're a bunch of guys on credit cards, so we scrape up $500 and we give to her. It's peculiar, but they just really don't want to spend the time getting all the stuff together. Now, what was weird about that was really weird, and I don't think they would normally do it. What was really weird about that, so I gave her the $500. I came back, and we were about 2 weeks before we ever got the order formalized and in. When we sent them the order, the machine was almost done. So they had been building the machines based on the $500 deposit, which really surprised me. You know, I would have never thought they would have done that in a million years. With the way they're working over there, the way their system works, they have infinite financing basically for factories. So, be right with you. They have infinite financing for factories. So when you send them an order, they can go get money to buy the raw materials to make that order right away. So just based on your PO. So they're able to borrow some money, and they take your 1/3 that you pay down, and they borrow the rest. So the way it kind of the way I understand it works, and I don't know for sure, but this is the way I understand it works. If they're spending 60% on materials to build the order, you pay 1/3, they're going to go to the bank and borrow the other 1/3, right? When the thing gets to the dock and you release the other 1/3, they're going to take that money and they're going to pay their loan off, right? And then when they get the final 1/3, that's profit. So that's kind of how they operate. But they also get something called VATs and rebates from the government, which is a whole different ball of wax I don't have time to go into. So they're into selling lots of volume because the government at the end of the year writes them a check for a percentage of their total gross sales. It's called a VAT. It's a return of tax. Because they're like, we have tax exempt status. When we buy stuff to make products in the United States, we don't pay sales tax. They do. So they're buying, when they're buying steel, they're paying sales tax. When they're buying stone, they're paying sales tax. But at the end of the year, if they can show that that product went out of the country, the government rebates them all that sales tax. And a lot of the factories will run completely on that rebate. So especially in plastics or rubbers or high volume businesses. Yeah.
I've only ordered one time from China, and what I'm concerned about is they gave me a sample of my product that looked great, and 6 weeks later, the order comes and it wasn't anything like the sample. So that's why I came to this. I mean, what do you do to prevent that from happening?
There are two things, and that's a good question. We have people on the ground in China, which is another reason that I want to have more people in our group, right? I have one person in China right now, Mr. Go, who goes to factories for me. Mr. Go. His name is actually Mr. Go, but he goes to factories. I got a picture. I wish I had it. If I had a screen, I got a picture of Mr. Go on a rowboat with a generator. So after that thing happened with the sealers, that the factory that made those sealers was on an island outside. I forget which port, near Shanghai actually. They were on an island. So we were trying to figure out how we're gonna make this work because they don't have 220. They don't have 110 in China, but they have generator factories that make factories for America. So we bought a generator, and I have a picture of Mr. Go, my guy, with a generator on a rowboat with a guy rowing him across the water to go to this island, and he would literally go in, set down the generator, crank it up, running on diesel, right, and plug in my machines and shoot videos of my machines running. So having somebody on the ground, especially with a new vendor that you don't know, is incredibly important. If you don't have a staff member to do that, I have a staff guy,
Do you have those contacts to introduce us to?
Well, I do, and I would be willing to share like my guys, and that would help me reduce some of my costs, because actually I would like to have 2 or 3 other people in China. But I don't want to spend that money out of my pocket completely. I'd share it, because I'd like to have people that go source to the factories, because what I could do is I can send them over to negotiate for me in person and give me a way better price than I can get over the phone. And like Kevin, I had dinner with Kevin Harrington last night, and he doesn't go over anymore. So they got their own staff people that go negotiate. It presents a whole nother set of problems, because then they'll make side deals. So there's all kinds of shit that goes on with this. But experience will help you past most of that. But there's a company called GES Services that will charge you between $600 and $800 a load. Typically, they got offices all over China. They'll go to the factory when the load is ready to load up, right? Or they'll even go different times during the process, just more expensive. And they'll go in and test the product, video the product, take pictures of the product. I mean, real detailed. Send them back to you and say, "Is this all right?" You know, they'll video it doing things. They'll make sure it's functioning the proper way. That $1,000 is the cheapest money, by the way, you'll ever spend. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I already have a Mr. Go, but
Yeah.
I'm still running into the problem of not getting what I've ordered. Do you know any insurance companies that will insure your shipments for your manufacturing?
You know what? I've not used them. Those guys set up at Canton Fair, there are guys that do it. But I don't know.
Get somebody in
GES will basically insure it for sure. That's kind of what you're paying GES for, because you can go back on GES. If GES says it was the right way and it's not when it gets here, you can go back on GES, sort of like a home inspector. You know what I mean? Be a pain in the ass. But GES, if you're dealing with ISO companies most of the time and you're dealing with GES, they're not going to screw with GES, because they don't want to get a bad reputation with the GES guy, because the GES guy's in their factory every couple of days for another vendor. So
factories aren't really, I do martial arts equipment.
Yeah. So you got kind of shit factories, yeah.
And sometimes Mr. Go, you don't know the difference between, like, the stitches are going to rip out on, say, a boxing glove.
Yeah.
Something like that. He looks at it, oh, Mr. Scott, everything looks great.
Yeah. If you can design testing, like if you can design stress testing and things, GES will they'll execute your tests. But no, seriously, you could have, if you want to take them and take the thing and hit it with a sledgehammer 10 times to see if it falls apart, they'll do that. But you just have to design the test to send them and tell them what the result should or should not be. Yeah. Other than that, it really comes down to developing good vendor relations. And when you get a good vendor, treat them really good. Don't beat them to death and keep trying to hammer them down and switch because you saved a penny. Yeah.
Barry, what's the best way to represent yourself to the vendor, as an individual, as a company? What do you say your company is?
They want to know about. I go over with a whole sheet on us. I've got a whole packet of who we are, what we do, our volume numbers, our because you know why? Because that's the way they do it.
Right.
So when you get a catalog from most Chinese factories, the first 3 or 4 pages are all their certificates and awards they've won, a picture of their president, a picture of the president of the company with the president of China going like that because they think you care, and on all those things. So like I buy a bunch of stuff from a guy right now that makes javelins and track and field equipment, and he makes all the track and field equipment for the Chinese Olympic teams. And he's super proud of that. It's all over his catalogs. So the more stuff, if you create a package, and I also create my own credit package when I go over in advance, because that's what the big guys do. So I go over with, here's my bank reference, I'm with Wells Fargo, here's my banker, here's my balance sheet, here's all my stuff. So that when I tell them that because a third is not a given, right? Some people, if they're new, they might ask for 50% or 70%. I get a third, and I don't ever try to beat them up much past that. I've got some factories now that I order, and I don't pay anything till it gets to the dock. But I've been dealing with them for a while. My buddy Dave's got factories that he orders. I've got one factory that I order from, water filter factory. I don't pay for the merchandise until it's been in the United States 60 days. But that took a long time to establish. Now there's also a new bank. There's a new government. Well, it used to be an insurance. It used to be an insurer, a Chinese insurer. They're now giving out loans. They're now setting up loans for importers because the Chinese economy and importing is going down. So the Chinese government's got what? What do they have a lot of? Cash. So they're taking their cash and loaning it to people who want to import stuff from China on short-term loans. So it's real easy if you've got decent credit. Like if you got a 700 Beacon and maybe own a home, they'll give you a $200,000-$300,000 line at almost no interest. Yeah.
Do they factor off orders?
You don't have to. They won't really factor off orders, but they'll just give you a certain line based on your personal credibility. Yeah. And pardon? I'll get you the name. I don't recall. Not that I'm trying to keep it from you. I just don't remember. We got set up through a war room member. One of our war room members, she's very connected to the Chinese government. So she got us set up with that, and we filled out like a piece of paper, and they gave us like $1 million. It was crazy. Yeah, it took like a day. I don't know how in the hell, and I don't have any. And guess what? There's no personal guarantee on it. It's a corporate thing. So now will that happen to you? I don't know. But we have a lot of money in the bank. We have a good relationship with Wells Fargo and other things. So we were pretty credible. But it was like, how could they even have checked us out so quickly? They gave us, Alibaba is getting in the business now of providing financing for importing. So that's their new thing too. Yeah.
I need a mold made of an object that I want to create.
Yep.
So do my drafting here, send it here to have the mold made, or let them handle it?
I don't know about the drafting part. It depends on what it is. The mold making by far is cheaper there. I mean, probably 20 cents on the dollar what it is in the U.S. Now, the challenge sometimes is the tooling. I try to own the mold, right? And the challenge is, depending on who the factory is, they may be using that mold in a Chinese machine, and that tooling's not going to fit any other machine. So you kind of, is it plastic? Yeah. Yeah, okay. You probably want to check. I forget, there are standard injection molding machines that are internationally recognized. I would try to work with factories that have those molding machines, because then you own the mold, and if you ever want to switch factories, they're bound to give you the mold back, but what are you going to do if they don't, right? So that's the only downer. It's almost, you got to pay the cost, it's less, but then the mold is practically disposable, versus if you get the mold made in the States, they're legitimate, they will give you the mold. But by far it's better. Now, that business is touchy, because if it's wrong, man, it's just damn wrong, you know? Yeah.
Where would we find out more information about doing the importing line of credit and stuff like that?
I'll have to get, is Emil in here? Yeah, Emil can get, he'll get everybody's contact information if you'll give all that to Emil. He's going with us to China, by the way. If you want him to get you that, we'll send out a pack with all that in it. Okay. I'm almost done with this part. Freight and duty, collective bargaining gets you better freight rates. A container right now to LA is anywhere between $2,600 and $4,000, depending on whether it's a low or what's called a high cube. Yeah, high cube. If you're packing a lot of really light goods, you can go into high cube. It's fluffy. If it's dense, you want to go into 20 or 40? Yeah.
Well, can you refer us which manufacturers do have the export licenses? I mean, do you know?
Yeah, anybody that's at the show, by the way, will have an export license. And they literally cannot put anything out the door without one. So anybody you're going to come into contact with pretty much does have. If you find a factory that doesn't, and I've done that before, you can get some amazing prices, but it's really risky. And usually those factories are difficult to communicate with, and you're going to have to pay somebody, or they're going to have to pay somebody a VIG to get the goods through. So now they may have a brother-in-law that owns another factory somewhere, and they can shove it on through his factory, and he won't charge them, or he'll charge them 5% or something. But it's becoming more and more difficult. And I'll tell you, if you want to venture, now that's China real. What we're doing is China light. This factory, we went to a factory in China a couple of years ago outside Shanghai, about a 3-hour drive outside Shanghai. And we got there just as dusk was coming in. And a buddy of mine was in a minivan. They took us all in a van, and he wasn't feeling well. When we got there, it was bumpy roads and stuff. And we didn't see a car for the last hour. We saw motorbikes and oxen. That was it. And we got there, and this company, by the way, was making pharmaceutical equipment. Machines, by the way, that fill IV bottles out of stainless steel. The room that they were working in was the size of this room, about right there. They had 5 or 6 machines under construction, and in the center of the room, and I swear to God I'm not lying, there was one naked 100-watt light bulb. And it was dusk. And they'll work till 10 o'clock at night that way, right? There's over to the left-hand side was a barracks with a bunch of concrete beds, no mattresses in them, right? They work 12 hours in the factory. They go over and sleep on the concrete, right? Now, I bought equipment from them. It was good equipment. When I had service issues, I was in big trouble because I couldn't communicate with the people. It was difficult. They were, and they had given me all the skin off of it too. There was no profit. There wasn't hardly any profit left in what they were doing. So they didn't have a lot of room to service. So you want to really you don't really want to do that. If you're buying kettlebells, maybe, because only so much shit breaks on a kettlebell, right?
And then as far as finding somebody to sell the wholesale, sell what you purchase in China, is it hard to find a retailer over here for the product?
Yeah, it's almost impossible, in fact, unless you have a reason for them to buy it, because there's no longer a value in being an importer. Mm-hmm. Like there used to be a whole industry that was Kmart would go to me because I was an importer, mm-hmm. and they would buy stuff that I bought for a quarter for 50 cents, and they'd sell it for $1. And then eventually, as China has gotten safer and more easy to maneuver and things like that, they just have buyers there now. Right. So there's no reason for them to buy from you. So the reason they'll buy from you is if you have a proven selling product under your brand, right? If you have a proven selling product, it's not your brand, and you go show it to them, you're the biggest dummy on earth, right? Because like right now, I talked to Harrington last night about, I've got this product called the Selfie Stick, which is really cool. It's hopefully you will see it on television very soon. But it's a stick, it's a telescoping stick that you put a iPhone on, and down here at the bottom there's a remote control button, so you sit here and take pictures. They have those already, right? They're already selling them. I think that we'll sell the Selfie Stick and build a brand out of it. And then the Selfie Stick will go into Bed Bath & Beyond. Where if I go to Bed Bath & Beyond and say, ooh, I got this awesome thing. It's a stick, you put a phone on it, you can take a picture, it's cool. They're going to go, wow, that is cool. You mind if I take a picture of that? Done. Right? You add no value then. They want to know that the first question you're going to be asked when you go to a retailer, where's your media? That's the first question you're going to be asked. Where's your media? What are you going to do? I've been asked this question a lot of times, so be prepared for it if that's your plan. What are you going to do to bring a customer into my store to buy your thing? I am not in the business of building you a business. That's what the retailer will tell you. All right? Now, if you have the #1 selling camera pod on Amazon and Newegg and Sears.com, then yeah, are they going to put you in? You betcha. And everybody oh yeah, that's a selfie stick. Have you seen one of those? They're really cool, right? That's a whole different animal. So either you can license a brand, or you can, there's got to be a reason why. You've got to either have proof of a winner that you control some IP on, right? And maybe it's just your design. And that's a cool thing about China. Try not to go to China and buy what's sitting on the table. Have them change a handle. Have them do something. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, when you are negotiating your per unit price to figure out your ROI and you're trying to figure out shipping, do you use the shippers out of China through the manufacturer?
No.
Or do you use your own?
Yeah, use your own. You use your own forwarding. You use a U.S. forwarding company who will also have an office in China. So almost all the forwarding companies that are in the States that are of size, they have offices at all the port cities in China. So they communicate from here to there, and that's what they get paid for.
So
And
that's
it's
interesting, because that's the struggle I've had in pricing the product to figure out my ROI, is I can't get it straight.
always price at FOB their port, so their closest port.
Oh.
Don't quote at FOB a U.S. port. Yeah.
Thank you.
And another thought, because I was actually looking at purchasing lead magnets, what have you. Do you have relationships, or does your Go guy have relationships with manufacturers for an innovative product? I have a guy that's designed something that needs to be built and manufactured with
Build all your prototyping in the States. I mean, you need to go over, when you go to China to buy, if you draw a picture of a football
you have to take it.
and you spec the football in a blueprint, you'll get back a basketball. You need to take the football.
Right. Well, my question is this: it's kind of see, I have friends in India.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to India because I have friends on the ground there that I've known, what have you. Because the rule of thumb is that